You were listening to From Sobriety to Recovery with Jesse Mogul. Let's get to the show. Welcome back to From Sobriety to Recovery. I am your host, Jesse Mogul. I am in addiction recovery, and I am shooting this episode for like the second, third, fourth. It's been a lot of times. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about self-doubt. And this is going to be a different episode than what was posted over on Podbean for episode 302 on self-doubt, because all the video footage was pixelated and it didn't work. And I wasn't going to post that bad of footage. Like my mouth didn't even line up with the words. I have no idea what Zoom was doing, what the computer internet connection was doing, but here we are shooting self-doubt again. And if you ever want to really feel a lot of self-doubt about moving forward on a big project when you don't have all that much time to perfect it or progress in it even really, and we'll talk about perfection, is certainly this whole YouTube experiment, which I really want to become a long-term experience. And at the same time, I need it to be more streamlined. And I remember when I first started my master's degree last fall, by about August or so, and it was taking me 20, 30 hours to write a 1,500 word paper. And I remember doing a lot of episodes around what I was experiencing and how I knew that over the course of time, I would habituate it and it would become less overwhelming than it felt in the moment whenever I was just learning how to write papers again and following APA formatting and structure and making sure I was referencing things correctly and summarizing and paraphrasing. And it was a lot. It was a lot. And I remember then thinking at some point, I'm going to habituate this. And because I had decided to get the master's degree, there was no going backward on it. So it was regardless of self-doubt, there was only the progression forward. There wasn't any, nope, we're not going to do this. Let's just stop. Maybe in 2 months, I'll figure it out. No, it was time. I'd taken out student loans. I'd already signed up. I'd gone through all the paperwork. It was go time. And so even in the moments I had self-doubt then, because I had created a pathway where I knew that after the course of a certain amount of time, in this case, 2 years of study, another year and a half of supervision and practicum and internship and all this other stuff, that I would be licensed as a professional counselor. This was what I wanted to do. And it reminded me a lot of when I got sober and when I stepped into Kaiser. And I was like, no, this is what I want to do. I don't care about what else is happening in my life. Sobriety and recovery are the priority now, and nothing will get in the way of this. I don't care if I lose my job, if my car explodes. I don't care. It is time. Earthquakes swallow up my house. Fine. That sucks. I'm still going to my meetings. So what we're going to talk about today is self-doubt, and it's going to be, again, completely different than the podcast episode, and hopefully a little bit more succinct, because I realize that y'all have a lot of things going on in life, and so much about what we are experiencing in our lives, but regardless of sobriety and recovery, can really be boiled down to how much confidence and esteem do we have in ourselves, and how much doubt and judgment do we have in ourselves. And self-doubt can come from a myriad of places, internally and externally. And we're going to cover that today. And again, hopefully succinct. So we're trying this out still. I've made it so I can't see myself on camera anymore. I just have my show notes in front of me, and maybe I'll read off of them a lot, and maybe I'll ramble on. I don't really know where this is going to go, but I appreciate your time. Again, you don't really need to subscribe. You don't really need to ding that little notification button. Your algorithm will tell you when I posted a new video. So if you like them, keep coming back and checking out the content. If you prefer the auditory method, again, this episode won't be like 302 on Podbean and anywhere you listen to streaming music. And I will hopefully figure this out to the point where there's not 2 different episodes, but that's what happened for this one. So that's what we're going to do. So let's talk about self-doubt, because again, like I just told you the story of me going into my master's degree, regardless of the self-doubt, I was going to see this through. And now after about 6 months, and I'm almost a year into it now, I'd gotten what was taking 20 or 30 hours down to about 5 to 7 hours. And that's counting in the research and everything else that goes into putting together a paper. So I knew that if I habituated things, eventually that I would figure out a system, I could strategize it, I could plan for it. And that's what we're really going to think about when we get into self-doubt, because there can be self-doubt that comes from you internally and externally. The comes from within, and we're going to discuss where all this is coming from. And of course, there's going to be the external self-doubt, which is when other people might judge you based on who you were or what you used to do, and then try to implant self-doubt into your mind based off of what they've experienced in your life previously. And as we talk on the show a lot, you are not who you were, you are who you decide to be today, and then the action you take today to make that decision about who you are today to actually materialize in the future. So it's a lot of words for saying you are not your horrible past that you find despicable and disgusting that you got sober to get away from. You were that person. Today you are a different person because you decide to be a different person, and the actions you take will create the actual externalization of that new person that you are now seeking to internalize as a new definition of who you are. And self-doubt is absolutely going to get in the way of all of that. And I know it can be almost insane because we get it in our heads that we want to accomplish something, especially sobriety and recovery. And we could have been in a flop house, addicted to our DOC to the point where everybody in our lives have left us. Our lives are in shambles, or we could be like the Brie Vanderkamps off of that Desperate Housewives show, where we are really just a functioning alcoholic. Nobody really even knows that we're popping pills at night to get some sleep. Nobody knows that we're showing up at school to pick up our kids with a little bit of a buzz. You could be completely functioning. And you're like, well, I'm not that. I'm not that homeless person dancing on the street corner out in front of the Hotel Roosevelt for 7 hours a day. So clearly I don't have an addiction issue. Now, once you start asking yourself if you have an addiction issue, you probably have already passed the point of no return on the addiction issue itself. If you're looking in the mirror being like, oh God, what the F did I do last night? Maybe I've got a problem. Yeah, congratulations, you've made it through the pre-contemplation phase. Now you're in the contemplation and planning phase. And I know for some of y'all, you're listening to this like, yeah, maybe I'm an addict, maybe I'm not, maybe I don't even need to be listening to this guy. This is really a life coaching show that's just disguised as a sobriety and recovery show, because in the end, once we take the addiction away, and you can call yourself an addict for the rest of your life. That's, you do you. The point being is, once we say, okay, I will no longer be actively addicted to this substance, and I said, we'll put it behind me and seek sobriety and recovery. Once we do that, that's where all the life coaching comes in. You can do your 12 steps, you can do your 4 truths, you can do your 8-fold path, you can do any of the many different workbooks that exist out there to help you strive for your short-term sobriety to get into long-term recovery. And all of those are great. I don't even need to rattle off all of the ones that exist. If you want to do it, you do you. Awesome. Because that's what we're looking for, is encouragement into the short-term sobriety that leads into long-term recovery. Once we have gotten the sobriety, and again, are the voices coming in and out? Is the little addiction monster trying to tell you that you need to go back and use because you had a crappy day? Yeah, that's going to happen. Guess what? That little voice is going to be telling you to do a lot of stuff because you had a crappy day. Go in there and eat a whole bag of Oreos. Maybe scream at your kids. Maybe get mad at your boss. Maybe cut somebody off on the way home from work. Flip them off. Maybe somebody did that to you. Now you're chasing them down like you're Fast and the Furious, and you're like, I'm going to get you. What are you going to do when you find them? You're going to pull over in a CVS parking lot and get into a fisticuff because somebody at work pissed you off, so now you're going to scream at a stranger? That's ridiculous. And so what we want to be understanding is that just taking the addictive substance out doesn't just miraculously make life better. I wish it did. It doesn't. So once we've got sobriety, now we get into the life coaching, and now we start thinking about what is it we actually want to create. And in that creation process, there is a very good chance that you are going to find yourself doubting your abilities. And again, is this internal? Is it externally coming at you? It can come from a lot of different positions. What's important to note is that it's about how you choose to internalize that self-doubt, how you choose to carry it through whatever it is that you're trying to do. And now there's that part of me that wonders, what do I look like on camera? My hair look good? Is the pixelization happening again? It was waving my hands around going to cause this whole thing to zoom in and out. And then I got to say, shut up, self-doubt monster, and just shoot the damn show. So let's do that. Self-doubt, it comes from a lot of places: time, space, matter, energy, language patterns, memories, decisions, personality profile, morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, standards of habits, principles. It can come from stigmatizations. It can come from so many places. Attitude, mood. Let's cover them all. And let's start with stigma. Now, on my show notes, this is further down, but I think it needs to come out now. So, stigma can come from a couple different places. It can come from internal and it can come from external. You might have an internal stigmatization about how you are perceived by the outside world. You might think addict, and you might picture some homeless person wandering around town with a bottle inside of a brown bag and say, well, I'm not that person, but I don't want to be that person. So let's get away from that version of myself and let's try to do something better for myself. And you look at that person and think that person has a problem. I don't have a problem. But yeah, my life doesn't seem like it's turning out the way that I'd like it to be. And maybe alcohol and drugs are the problem. So you choose to make that change in yourself. You still don't internalize yourself as that homeless person or whatever, that person at the end of the bar stool who's there every single day, who is overweight or, sad or crying or angry or whatever you choose other people and judge them to be. You can possibly be also judging aspects of yourself that mirror those things that you see in other people that you don't like. That becomes a stigma that you've attached to that person, and then you can internalize that stigma and start to doubt yourself. There's also stigma that comes from the external world, where people might hear you say that you're an addict or you're an alcoholic or you're a drug addict. And then they're going to picture whatever they picture in their heads. And it might be that homeless person laying all on the street, cracked out. I used to live in Hollywood. I know what addiction on the street looks like. There was homeless encampments across the street from my apartment in Hollywood for years. I absolutely know what it's like to see people on crack and heroin and meth and fentanyl and all these other drugs just laid out. I mean, there was a woman who would just walk out into the middle of the street completely naked and start screaming at cars. And I could just open up my window and watch this on any given day. Like literally, if a day ended in Y, I was going to see some homeless people acting pretty crazy on the drugs. Now, I don't judge them as crazy, but I certainly think that in the moment, that behavior could have been deemed by society as not being normalized to what society would prefer to see from people. And that could be considered a stigma. So now that we've discussed stigma, at least in a way that can move this podcast forward about self-doubt, maybe we'll do a whole episode on stigma some other time. But today isn't that day. What today is going to be about is self-doubt and understanding that there's going to be a stigma that comes from internalization of your addiction. And there's going to be stigma that comes from externally, from society, from people in your family, from your loved ones, your social circle, your coworkers, hell, people who see you leaving a liquor store with a big freaking bottle of booze at noon. I would leave liquor stores at like 7 a.m. with a big bottle of booze. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is. You might feel a judgment from society, and they are more than likely attaching a stigma to your behavior. So when you go to tell people that you're in sobriety and recovery and that you haven't drank for X amount of time, there might be an internalization of what is that person currently picturing about me because I just told them that I'm an addict or that I just told them that I'm in addiction recovery. I had to tell somebody yesterday, no, I don't drink. And I got this little eye raise. What was it like? It was like bewilderment, confusion. They didn't know. Now they've known me for like 8 months, but they did not know that I was sober. So when they went to offer me booze and I said, no, I'm not allowed to drink, I got a little bit of a, I can't mimic the face perfectly, but it was a face. And I thought in that moment, I wonder what they're thinking about me. And then I realized I don't give a damn what they're thinking about me. I care what I'm thinking about me. And no, I don't need your booze. So stigma being what it is, it can absolutely affect your self-doubt, and you can internalize how you might think other people are perceiving you. And then again, that's going to come in there and do a whole thing. I think I've talked about stigma long enough. Oh my goodness. I'm really excited. Is it too much of this? Is it too much of this? This is my Friends coffee cup, Central Perk. I love Friends. I used to watch Friends a lot when I was sad. It became my sad show. When I first broke my leg, I watched the whole Friends all the way through, like 4 or 5 times. I mean, literally all 9, 10 seasons of it. It would just be on all day long while I was sitting there just plowing through booze back in 2016 when I broke my leg, which is what led me to sobriety and recovery. So let's talk about self-doubt. Again, let's start off with time. That time is that progression of moments affecting your life, right? Time is time. So you could have self-doubt in your life based off of things that you tried to do when you were younger that you didn't succeed in, or you succeeded in, but they didn't give you the result that you had hoped for. And now here you are older, you're a completely different person. Again, we're going to get into some personality profiling and decisions, morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs. And while some of those can be similar, they are going to evolve with you as you age. And so if there was a time in your life that you went to go accomplish something and that didn't necessarily work out for you as well as you would have liked, that can instill a little bit of self-doubt. Your reticular activating system and your confirmation bias can work together to grow that self-doubt within you. And now here you are sitting outside of a clinic ready to check yourself in, and you might have self-doubt on whether you can see this through, self-doubt on what time in your life an emotion might trigger you to want to go back to using. There's going to be a lot of that future pacing where we get ourselves locked into, I've got to be sober forever. We're sober today, and we're definitely seeking sobriety tomorrow. Let's worry about forever when forever comes. And that's one of my favorite techno songs is called Tomorrow Never Comes, because it's never tomorrow. It's always today. But that progression of time in your life could create self-doubt where things that didn't work out for you in the past, maybe you've tried getting sober 20 times and you're like, well, why is this time different than any of the other times? That's how I felt when I first got into sobriety and recovery. What's different about this time? I realized I never checked myself into a clinic. I never got myself a therapist. I never put in the work. I didn't go to meetings. And so to me, it was different because I was putting in a lot different kinds of effort. You may have put in all that kind of effort I had not previously put in. And now you're thinking, well, still, why is this different? Because you choose to experience it differently. And that's where we move into our next item on the self-doubt list, space. It's that physical, emotional environment that can influence your personal growth and your sobriety and recovery. So what space are you putting yourself in? That really does line up right with energy, which is coming up. It's that emotional, mental force that drives our behaviors. So if I choose to combine my space and my energy, and I say, I'm going to this meeting and I'm going to choose to experience it differently, and it's a choice. Don't think it's not a choice. Because I know people who've gone into AA meetings and then come out and been like, those people are stupid. They talk about nonsense. I'm not them. Their lives are in shambles. I'm fine. Well, guess what? If you found yourself in those four walls, a part of you needed to be there. And you don't have to attach everything about you to any of those people in there. But realizing that going in there is a sign to yourself that one, you need external assistance, you need a support system, and that three, a part of you felt driven and compelled to go in there. So to completely reject it as not at all going to work for you is to take a very valuable piece of the sobriety and recovery journey, put it up on a shelf and say, that's not for me. Maybe AA isn't, but Refuge or SMART and any of those other ones I covered in 301 could absolutely be a part. But it's all about putting yourself in a space, that physical, emotional environment that can influence you, and then putting a direct energy into it. So you might have self-doubt about where you are physically, and maybe it is your body that you're not happy with. Maybe it is your emotional space, and you feel sad and depressed and lonely, constantly on the verge of tears, perhaps even depression. Now, all of a sudden, that energy is being included in this entire decision-making process about how much confidence you have in yourself. So when we look back at self-doubt, where in your life was your physical or emotional environment pushing a level of self-doubt in you? And this, again, can have a lot to do with external factors, other people's interpretations and perceptions of you that they then externalize to you or to somebody else that comes back to you. Because it doesn't really matter if people talk a bunch of crap behind my back and I never hear about it. It really only matters whenever I hear about it and then I decide to internalize the things that I've heard from them. Whether I care about their opinion or not, it doesn't mean mean that I still won't be affected by somebody's negative opinion of me. There's going to be that part of me that wants to be included, that wants to be liked, that wants to be perceived as somebody that matters. And if I hear a bunch of people running their mouths about why I don't matter or why I'm a dope or a dunce head or anything, and this could be at work, it could be at home, this could be at a public event, and everyone's like, that guy dances like a moron. Do I care what these people think about my dancing? I used to, and it would bring in self-doubt. And when I was in a space where live music was happening and I wanted my energy to be positive, instead I had this self-doubt that even in this space, I couldn't be who I really wanted to be. The further I've gone along in my sobriety and recovery journey, the more I realize that none of those people around me at the arena matter. What matters is me interpreting that band's music into my life in that moment. How am I going to attach a positive anchor to this experience? Because I don't know any of these people around me. I won't know any of these people around me when the show ends. I will end up in my car, driving back to my house, living my life the way I was always living my life. But now I get to have a positive experience of dancing to the band rather than having self-doubt about myself during the show that would cause me to mute myself. And I'm tired of muting myself. I muted myself for years in hopes that I wouldn't rock the boat enough that anybody who was dealing with my drunk ass would be cool enough to still want to talk to me the next day. I don't have to do that anymore. Now, if you don't want to talk to me, it's because you don't like sobriety and recovery, Jesse, which is fine because I don't need you to like sobriety and recovery, Jesse. I like sobriety and recovery, Jesse. And if you're not a biggest fan of me, that's okay. Other people are. I'll go spend my time with them. And that's how you might want to start interpreting who you have around you and whether they're supporting your sobriety and recovery journey or whether they're rejecting it. Because there's plenty of people that will put their arms out and say, come on over here and welcome to the club. And if other people want to judge you by some dumb stuff you did 12 years ago or 12 hours ago, then that's on them. You might need to make some amends. I get it. We definitely want to humble ourselves and have gratitude for those who put up with our drugged up and drunk asses for all those years. But at some point, we have to realize that who we were is not who we are today. And then we get into the language patterns that we use. So that's another category. So far, and I know, feeling a little hyper here. You know what? Let's take a pause. I really do love water. Water is delicious. Time, space, matter, energy. Matter is that physical reality that we believe influences our actions and our recovery environment. You know, this thing's made out of matter. This little remote's made out of matter. We're made out of matter. So the people we're around could be considered matter. So we've got time, space, matter, and energy. What time in your life did something occur that could have instilled self-doubt into you? What physical or emotional space were you in that could have instilled self-doubt in you? What is some energy or matter, the people around you, the energy that could be influencing your self-doubt? Understand that to really get deep into the sobriety and recovery journey, so much of it has to do with your own internalization of yourself first and foremost. Other people, you cannot control every little aspect of how they're going to perceive you. Your actions can speak louder than words, absolutely. But if they choose to see you show up to something 30 times in a row, and then that one time you don't show up on time, they'd say, see, you haven't really changed. Then that's up to them to make that choice to see the other 30 times you did show up on time versus the one time that you didn't. If they want to hold you to some ridiculous standard of perfection, wow, what must be going on in their mind to think that any human can be perfect? And how are they judging themselves on a day-to-day basis? Because there's no way they're getting that perfection. And we will often judge others based off of their actions, but we will judge ourselves based on our intentions. I intended to show up on time, thus I didn't do a bad thing by being late, versus somebody else who will judge for being late, regardless if they tell us their intention was to be on time. So we judge others based on actions, but we can often judge ourselves based on the intention of what we were trying to achieve, even if we'd fail. The problem with this is that sometimes we actually need to be judging ourselves based off of our actions, and we need to be giving people that levity and that empathy to judge them based off of their intentions. And I'm using the word judge. I'm not a big fan of the word judgment, but it is a natural process of the brain to judge. And we're going to get into some comparisons and contrasting a little bit later in the episode. But do understand that it's not a negative that you judge. It is a negative that you continue to let that judgment spiral you down a path that can harm you or somebody else. And I don't mean harm like in physical. I mean harm just like emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Like there's a lot of kind of harm we can bring to ourselves and others that has nothing to do with hurting their physical body. It could be talking down to them. It could be rejecting them. It could be causing arguments with them. We just want to be mindful that when we judge, again, it is a split-second decision that happens within the brain, often programmed and anchored in through, again, so many other things. So don't be so pissed off at yourself for judging. Be pissed off at yourself for letting that spiraling judgment cause you to change your behaviors, whereas you could have had more empathy, compassion, and gratitude. Moving forward, boy, are we going to cover a lot today. Language patterns. These are the repeated words that shape your mindset and shape your actions. So if you tell yourself, I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I'm a fat, disgusting, horrible person who drank myself to oblivion and nobody will ever love me, boy, oh boy. Repeat that for the next 20 years of your life and see if you don't wake up in a bathtub of death at 40 thinking that nobody loves you, which is certainly what happened over here. So understand that your language patterns absolutely affect how much self-doubt you will carry inside of yourself. Language patterns from other people, especially those that you love, can absolutely adversely affect your self-confidence and esteem and can implant self-doubt into you. Well, this person says they love me. They've loved me more than anyone. They married me, or they gave birth to me, or they raised me my entire life. And if they don't believe in me, well, then who will believe in me? You will believe in yourself first. You will take the actions and you will start to create sobriety and recovery in your life. And then other people will be equally, I'm not going to even say equal. Other people will notice the shifts in you. And depending on how much compassion and empathy they can have for themselves, will be a very direct reflection on how much compassion and empathy they have towards you at the beginning stages. They will want to continue seeing growth, just like you're going to want to continue seeing growth and shifting your language patterns to be more uplifting. And I don't expect you to go from, I'm a horrible, disgusting human being to, I love myself and I've always loved myself. That is like leaping over the Grand Canyon, Evel Knievel style. What we're looking for is, I'm a horrible, disgusting person who doesn't deserve the oxygen that I am currently taking in, and this planet would be better off without me, to I'm a human who's fallible and can make poor decisions. And today I'm seeking to make a better decision. That is still a pretty good jump, but it's certainly not the leap from I'm disgusting and hate myself to I love myself and everything I've ever done is correct. So what we can do is take these little tiny baby steps in how we talk to ourselves, because the unconscious and conscious mind are going to have a bit of a conflict. They're going to find an incongruency. If I go to from day, waking up in death tub on January 12th of 2017 to going into the clinic on January 16th of 2017. And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to just be like, I love me. Everything's great. I've done nothing wrong. The mind's going to know I need to repair some things. But I don't need to simultaneously be whipping its ass about things that I had done, as much as I could start to talk to myself in a more caring, compassionate manner. Imagine you were a 3-year-old trying to learn to walk. Is that how old is that how old the human is when they learn to walk? However old they are when they learn to walk, if they fell down, would you start screaming at them, hey, you're a loser. Why aren't you running marathons? You just took your first step. No, we would have some empathy and compassion and love, and we'd go pick them up and say, great job. Let's do it again. Yes, you're going to fall down a lot, but the more you fall down, the more you push yourself back up off that floor. You pick yourself up. The more you pick yourself up, the stronger you become physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That's how we're building resilience here. Your memories can come in with self-doubt. Did you once get up on stage and try to be in theater whenever you were 10 years old? And that didn't go very well. Now, all of a sudden, you're being asked to stand up in front of a meeting, introduce yourself, tell your story. You might have some self-doubt that you can pull that off because a long, long time ago, you didn't do it very well. Our memories can absolutely affect our self-doubt, especially if these memories are of attempts at getting sober and stepping into a long-term recovery. And it was in those decisions, which are also a huge factor in self-doubt. The decisions we make can affect the memories that we have and the perceptions we have about ourselves. Now, understand that if you made that decision from an energetic state that was not emotionally grounded in the idea of long-term sobriety and recovery, and then you didn't put yourself in a healthy space, maybe the timing wasn't right. You're trying to get sober while you were literally in the throes of your senior year at college and you're in a fraternity and all your people are loving you getting hammered on a Thursday night. Yeah, that may have not been the most conducive time, space, matter, energy, or decision making process that you took at the time. But anchoring your entire ability based on whether you can succeed now in your 30s or whatever on that decision you made in your early 20s to get sober would be ridiculous, because the timing, the decision, the memory you have from that period of time, it's going to be clouded. And to say, well, I couldn't figure it out at 22, why is 32 going to be any different? Because again, we're seeking to come at it from a different angle. Same problem, different perspective, different position. So because you tried to make the decision in your early 20s and maybe the timing is off, maybe the decision wasn't as firm as it is today, that could still impose its will upon your confidence and esteem, thus flexing self-doubt within you. And what we're seeking here is to not necessarily eliminate self-doubt. It is to emotionally feel into the self-doubt and then honestly rationalize our way through it. And we are going to need to be in a more thinking process, right? If we're coming at this extremely emotionally at a height of an adrenaline surge, of an angry moment, of an emotionally down moment, we're more in our limbic system, we're more in the reptilian brain, we're not thinking with our rational prefrontal cortex. So again, where are you coming at the decision making process? Being able to achieve your way through self-doubt is a lot of rationalizations. And my therapist would call that mental gymnastics. Well, the more our actions actually are congruent with what we want to achieve in our lives, the less it's mental gymnastics and the more it is just relearning or learning new behaviors and then turning that into our habituation. Because at the beginning stages, going to a sports bar or going to a public social event and not drinking might seem wildly foreign to you. But the more you do it, the more you're exposed to that, the more confidence you'll have in yourself to do that, and the less self-doubt you'll have about yourself being able to go into those situations and not only manage the addiction, but to come out of it thriving, having had a great time. Whereas others might have gone in and said, man, that was miserable. I got to watch everybody getting drunk, having fun. I was having fun too. I just get to wake up in the morning with less of a hangover, no hangover. And what I meant to say was less of a headache and no hangover. I can still wake up with a hangover, a headache once in a while because I didn't drink enough water the night before. Speaking of that, mm, water is delicious. To understand that the decisions that you have made in the past can be affecting your self-doubt because you have decided to make a massive change in your life and it didn't work out the way that you had expected it or hoped that it would. And while expectations are the leading cause of disappointment, they again are a natural part of the human experience. We make a decision, we start to take action. There are some expectations of our behaviors, expectations of our outcomes that we are seeking to achieve. But just like if you were to start the Appalachian Trail in Georgia, expecting that you're going to be able to walk it at a predetermined amount of time all the way up to Maine without factoring in daily weather patterns, your tiredness and fatigue level, your shoes, your nutrition, your energy, all of these things would be ill-conceived to just assume everything's going to play out the way that it's supposed to. Planning is priceless, but plans are often worthless because once we actually start on the behavior, then all of a sudden the external effects come in, other people, places, and things can begin to manifest themselves into the plan and strategy. They can manipulate and influence the way we actually go off and take action on this decision. And then we've got to internalize all of that stuff. So now that we've covered a lot of that, personality profiles, So, what is your personality like? Now, in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, we call a lot of these meta programs. Do you externally or internally process information? Are you in time or through time? Meaning, are you constantly like running yourself like a military watch, or are you more just la, 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 and just experiencing life as it comes to you? Do you have energy that leads you toward what you want rather than away, what you're trying to get away from? How do you convince yourself that you're good at something because you've done it once, or do you need to convince yourself every single time you pick that thing up to go do it? How do you know that you are in long-term sobriety and recovery with your personality? Is it that each day you're proving to yourself you're still in it to win it? Or once you've done it for a period of time, you're like, okay, now this is my new life. What can I do to grow my life? What can I do to evolve my life? So, your personality profiles, do you get angry at the drop of a hat? Or are you more empathetic? Do you internalize information, then question why it's there, and then try to figure out a way to externalize it? There's a lot. But when we think about our personality profile, if we have one that deems us worthy, then we're often going to go into it with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset that might think that we are just who we are. Myers-Briggs likes to do a lot of things that are personality profile-y. They did take a majority of that from Carl Jung. They weren't scientists. They were out of work mom, mother and daughter journalists. I think they wrote ad copy, and they couldn't find any work at the time, so they got a hold of some Carl Jung stuff, threw in another category or two, and then just said, there you go. Now we're going to create this, and society, for whatever reason, grabbed a hold of it and said, well, that's how we're going to start to figure out people's personalities. Are you an IMFJ or ET? I don't know the other ones. I think I'm an IMFJ. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's not important, but definitely if you've ever taken one of those personality tests from Myers-Briggs, then you can understand what it would say about, and how does that create self-doubt or create self-confidence in you. Morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, standards of habits, and principles. We talk about these on the show based off of spirituality. Now, the reason I do this with spirituality is, well, everything that's religious is spiritual, not everything that's spiritual is religious. And one of my belief systems is that religion exists for a lot of reasons. But if I was just going to discuss it as it pertains to what we are covering in this show, it would be that. Religion seeks to instill morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, standards, and principles into our psyche based off of what has been predetermined as a good way of living one's life based off of this spiritual book. So if you're a Christian or you're a Muslim or you're Jewish, your book is going to give you certain information that it will then hope affects the way that you choose to live your life. And that's going to have a lot to do with your morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, standards of habits, and principles. And so, while again, this is whittled down to its almost finiteness. It's just a much more palatable way for us to discuss how we're living our lives, because morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, all of that stuff absolutely directly connects to how we are going to perceive ourselves in our addiction, how we're going to perceive ourselves in our sobriety and recovery. And if we are surrounding ourselves with other people who have similar spiritual beliefs, then how they perceive us is going to be portrayed through that religious book, or through, you could be into like human design would be one of those that I would call has a spiritual aspect. Astrology has a spiritual aspect. So if you run your entire life through your astrological signs, and everybody else around you also runs their lives through the astrological signs, then they're going to be running your life through astrological signs. And that could absolutely influence how they perceive who you are as a person. And it's going to directly affect how you perceive yourself as a person. Is this stuff predetermined, or do you have actionable ways of influencing it? So you know what your morals are. These are those personal principles that guide your right and wrong behaviors, or at least how they're judged by you and society as right and wrong. You got your ethics, which is your standards of behavior in social or professional standings. It's very similar to shame versus guilt in the way that I frame it, as I frame that shame is an external interpretation of your behaviors versus guilt, which is an internal interpretation of your behaviors. And one of my lights just shifted, so we're going to hope that it holds on. I don't know how that's going to work out. Now my brain wants to get up and fix it, so that's what we're going to go do, and we're going to pause. And we're back. All right. I'm still figuring out this whole light thing, and I had to make my own light box, soft box, so that the light wasn't so bright. And it's not holding on as well as I thought it would. So we'll figure that out later. No self doubt about this episode. Just powering through. So what I was talking about? Guilt and shame. So I might have guilt about my action, but if nobody really knows about it, do I feel the shame? But if I feel shame, it could be because not only was my action something that went against my own moral ethics, values, opinions, and beliefs, but I know that it went against society's. I remember when I was like 4 or 5, 6 years old. For whatever reason, I was taking money out of, oh, yeah, I know what reason. I was taking money out of my grandma's purse and then going to 7-Eleven and buying candies and sodas with it. Well, at some point, she realized that money was disappearing out of her wallet, and I was the only one who possibly could have been doing it. And I remember being called out and sat down by my parents and grandma and asking me why I was taking money out of the purse. Now, I knew what I was doing wasn't right because I was doing it in secret. But all of a sudden, when the family found out and they wanted to bring it to my attention that they knew I was doing it, then I felt shame. And yes, I got spanked and I got reprimanded for it. But overall, like I felt guilt about it. And I knew that it was shameful what I was doing, but I didn't really feel that shame until the family brought it to my attention that they knew and that what I was doing went against the morals, ethics, and values that this family was going to adhere to. So just a quick, literally off the top of my head, I can't believe that came to my mind. That's how awesome the mind is. It's like, hey, you want a story about shame and guilt? Here's one. So understand that the ethics is often the way that it's defined, by Webster's or, the internet would be, are your standards of behavior meeting those of the standards that society and your professionalism would dictate. And then we've got our values. These are the core beliefs that shape and prioritize your life choices. So, if one of your values is independence, therefore you think that you can go off and get sober without anybody's help because I will do it on my own and I need nobody, right? That could start to instill self doubt in you when you're finding the sobriety and recovery journey difficult to sustain, but yet you want to adhere so much to that independence principle because it might be more comforting to hear other people's stories or have somebody to call, like a sponsor, who could say, hey, what you're feeling right now is typical to the human experience of early sobriety and recovery. Let's talk about it. Let's work our way through it. We're not expecting you to mute self doubt because muting is what we did in our addiction. So in our sobriety and recovery, we want to feel, we just don't want to spiral. It's like standing in quicksand versus just walking over it, standing in concrete versus just putting your foot down into it. It might leave an impression if you just push your foot down into the concrete, but if you stand in it, you're going to get stuck. And this is where you might find your morals, ethics, values, and opinions and beliefs adversely directing your self doubt, which would then adversely influence your feelings about your sobriety and recovery. Your core beliefs, again, this is where those beliefs, those are those deep convictions, often tied to our political or social justice kind of stances, would be, well, I believe this thing about this party, or I believe this thing about those kinds of people. I believe, I'm from Oklahoma. There's a general rivalry between Oklahoma and Texas. I used to live in Indiana. There was a general rivalry between Indiana and Kentucky. I used to live in Florida. There's a general rivalry between Florida and Georgia. And there's jokes about one another that really just slide in each other's states in and out because you can make the same jokes. I'm sure North and South Dakota and North and South Carolina probably have jokes about each other, but there can literally be a belief system you have about those kinds of people. And when you are one of those kinds of people, because you have been an addict for so long, that belief system you have about yourself, about addiction, about your behaviors and your actions that have then gone against the morals, the ethics, and the values that you would prefer to be adhering to, then you're going to be finding yourself in a situation where those opinions of yourself create self doubt, the beliefs about yourself create self doubt. And that's going to change your standards of habits, or at least affect and influence and potentially manipulate your standards of habits. So, self doubt can come in because of the habits that you have. If one of your habits is sleeping all day and spending your nights in front of a computer playing video games or in chat rooms on Reddit, then yeah, you might have some self doubt about whether you can go to meetings and actually facilitate a conversation with a complete stranger because you don't feel like you have a whole lot of interpersonal communication skills. One of your standards of habits could be not going to the gym. It could be not opening up about your emotions to your loved ones. If that is one of your habits, it can then lead to having self doubt when you want to open up to your loved ones, when you want to start eating healthier or going to the gym or exercising in any capacity. Your standards of habits are those consistent behaviors that influence your daily recovery successes. And if they go against being a positive influence on your daily recovery, then you're going to find a feeling of negativity start to seep inside of you, thus fueling that internal self doubt even more. And then we've got our principles. Now, I can define principles as that growth versus fixed mindset, self compassion versus self hatred, progressionism versus perfectionism, empathy versus comparison. I'm having a hard time with the comparison one because, again, like judgments, it can happen that quickly. We can compare ourselves to other people. Where I do like to involve empathy, acceptance, reflection, gratitude, contentment, mindfulness, confidence. Those were just some that I threw into the notes. Was that when we go to compare ourselves to others, we don't understand the time, space, matter, energy, language patterns, memories, decisions, personality profile, morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, standards of habits, principles. We don't have a full grasp of much of that when we go to compare ourselves to others or judge others. We only really get to externalize what we're experiencing in the moment. And depending on how much experience we have with that person, then again, those memories, time, space, matter, all this stuff will affect how we choose to compare ourselves to that person. Well, I'm not as bad as them, or they're better than me. It is a collection of our memories and our experiences, everything else that we've covered on this show. And now we're going to directly compare ourselves to that. Now, whether we come out of it feeling better or worse about ourselves because of that comparison, again, is very strongly dictated by the choice we make in that moment on how much weight we put behind the comparison. But either way, we're going to want to realize that we don't have a full concept of that person, even if they lived with us their entire lives. We don't know what was going on in their heads. We certainly weren't around them every single second of every single day and experiencing everything that they experienced. Even if you were attached at the hip, like those twins that, you twins attached at the hip, finally separated after 27 years. That 1 degree of difference in their body, that 1 foot or however wide their body was, that's enough to completely shape a different person. Just like siblings don't grow up being the same people just because they were raised by the same parents, neither would you have a full understanding of why you turned out so differently than a sibling or another relative or a friend, just because you all had a lot of the same experiences. You guys went to the same things as children. So why didn't you become same adults? Because of all of this stuff that we've already covered. And that, again, it doesn't just affect self doubt, it is an accumulation. So, time, space, matter, energy, language patterns, memories, decisions, experiences, personality profile, morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, standards of habits, principles. These are your guiding lights. Are they taking you toward what you want to be going? Are they trying to push you away from what you don't want to be? Are they fueling self-doubt? Are they aiding in your self-confidence? When you compare yourself to others, step into a place of empathy for yourself and for the other person, because you have no full idea of what they've gone through to become the person they currently are standing in front of you. And even if, let's say, a tragedy happened, oh, I don't know why you internalized the house burning down when we were 12 the way that you did. I experienced it completely different, and my way is the right way. Well, F you, your way is not the right way. If somebody else wants to be demoralized and crushed because their house burnt down, and you'd be like, screw it, I got money, I'll just go buy new stuff. I don't care about my baby shoes that were copperized by my parents whenever I was 6, and I definitely don't want those stupid baby teeth anymore. So burn, baby, burn. That's fine if that's how you want to internalize it. But being a jerk to somebody else for wanting to internalize it, or unconsciously just anchoring into a different way of internalizing it, is so counterproductive to being helpful to people that I cannot even begin to express how little empathy you're showing towards yourself and others in that moment. So be mindful of that comparison. And then we're going to finish with attitudes and mood. And attitude is a long lasting, I would say, I don't even know if I want to call it an emotion, but it is a long lasting mindset that really does shape and shape our reactions and our decisions about how we feel and care and think about something. So you might have an attitude. Okay, I just did that whole Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky thing. So let's go back to Oklahoma, Texas. I might have an attitude towards Texans that they are blank, 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 and blank. And they might have an attitude towards Oklahomans that we are blank, 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 and blank. That's our general attitude about somebody from that state. Now, my mood is more of an temporary emotional state, whereas an attitude could be construed as a long-term emotional state. So my mood about Texans could change in the moment if I come across one and they're super helpful, they're super talkative. I'm living in Singapore and I come across somebody from Texas who loves the University of Texas. I'm a huge fan of the Oklahoma Sooners, and yet we're sitting there talking about our old football games and all the different contests that we've had against each other. But because, again, my space and my environment are so far away from the United States that I'm just happy to be connecting with someone who understands the Oklahoma Texas rivalry the way that I do. Now, all of a sudden, my mood about Texans in that moment gets to shift because I'm enjoying this person's interaction. I'm actually having fun with it. So the time is different, the space is different, the energy, our language patterns, all five of these things are coming into play as I'm sitting in a location in Singapore talking with somebody who borders my state of birth, talking about a football rivalry that we both love to watch and experience. Now, that's my mood. It's more short term. It can last for a short period of time, long period of time. The timing is very generalized here. It doesn't need to be an exact amount of time that we're talking about. It's less, it's more so under, yeah, in my notes, I got that it's less under conscious control, but I think that it's more in the conscious decision making to enjoy this person rather than argue with this person. Whereas the attitude we have about somebody is going to have an unconscious directive implanted into our psyche, but we get to actionably determine whether that's the attitude we want to have towards Texans every single day or addicts. My attitude towards addicts could be that they are unreliable, irresponsible, and should not be trusted. That could be my general attitude. Unreliable, irresponsible, can't be trusted. So my mood when I come across an addict could be that of negative. Oh, I think they're unreliable, irresponsible, and can't be trusted. So why would I be nice to this person? So my mood towards them will be sour. I can choose to have a different attitude towards addicts and say, I don't think that they're irresponsible and unreliable and can't be trusted. I think that they can be trusted, they can be reliable, and they can be responsible. And saying that all addicts are anything is absolutely disadvantageous to experiencing each human as the amazing creature they are. Have some people who are addicts been irresponsible, unreliable, and not trustworthy around me? Sure. So have people who aren't addicts been irresponsible, unreliable, and not worthy of my trust. So to say, oh, all addicts are this would be that's irresponsible on me. So understand that mood is more of a temporary short-term emotion versus attitude, which is a more long-term emotion, fixed mindset kind of way of experiencing somebody. So when you go to a meeting and your attitude towards meetings could be, these are a waste of time, I don't care. That's going to change your mood to being sour and really unresponsive to anything that you could potentially learn at the meeting. Versus if you have an attitude of, well, meetings do bring some benefit, so I'm going to go into this meeting with the mood of curiosity and encouragement and see what I learn. If you've got three people sitting in a line and one of them says meetings are stupid, so I'm absolutely in a bad mood, I'm angry I even have to be here. The person in the middle is, meetings can be helpful, so I'm going to come into it with curiosity and encouragement. And then the other person who absolutely has the attitude that meetings are awesome, and therefore they come into it with a mood of enthusiasm, reciprocity, care, compassion, all those other things. How do you think those three people sitting literally one chair, boom, 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 how different do you think that experience of that meeting is going to be from them if one people thinks they're a waste of time, one person thinks they can generally be helpful, and the other person absolutely loves coming to them? That's going to be your attitude, is how you sit in that chair. And it's going to affect your mood, which is going to shift what it is you take in, which is either going to feed self doubt or feed self confidence and higher self esteem. We're not looking for self esteem that makes us think that we're better than people. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I barely think I'm better than the morning version of myself most nights when I go to bed. I'm seeking to be better than I was when I woke up. That's why my lock screen on my phone says, look in the mirror, that's your competition. I am competing against me every single day to be a more elevated version of myself, or at the least, don't roll back down the mountain. Maybe I do take a couple slip slides, melting down the mountain, have to grab onto a root, pull myself up. Maybe I got to take a breather. That's fine. I just don't want to fall all the way back down. And again, that's more of a metaphor and not a reality. I'm not expecting anybody to fall down a mountain when I say that. But if we see life as this continuation of seeking to accomplish or experience things in our life, oftentimes a metaphor that's brought into this situation would be that of climbing a mountain. And there are certain times where the mountain might even out and then it goes back up. We've all walked trails up certain mountains where it's not actually that physically demanding, but it just takes up a lot more of our time, which again can fuel. Well, this isn't. I'm not going straight up like Tour de France style versus a meandering walkabout with switchbacks. Right, that could increase our self confidence in making up to the top. I'm thinking San Jacinto here in Southern California. That was very much like this meandering switchback kind of trail versus one like I walked in Mexico City, where I wasn't really even sure where the trail up the top of this mountain was. And I just saw sort of kind of a trail and just started walking straight up it. And that's all I did the entire time. There was no switchbacks. There was no real trail as much as there was just a lot of rocks. And I just sort of walked around those rocks. What's funny is the experience of coming down those two mountains is very different, in a story for another day. But understand that not all mountains mean that you're going straight up. And some of them can be these meandering switchbacks, which will affect your self confidence or your self doubt in yourself. So that's our self doubt. Again, I thought I was going to be able to do this in 30 minutes. I think I've got us closer to 50. How many of you make it to the end? More power to you. I really appreciate that. When you think of self doubt, time, the progression of moments affecting the recovery journey, your space, that's that physical or emotional environment that you're in, your matter, the physical reality that's influencing it, which could be other people. A phone is matter that could affect your reality. Your watch can affect your reality. How much money you have in the bank account. These are the things I talk about whenever we're talking about matter. Things that like cellular structure. What in there, like a proton and neutron or something in these things, and that's you combine enough of those things, and that's how you get a coffee cup versus whatever the raw material was that was going to make it. Right, you take a raw material, which is matter, and then you manipulate it and it turns into a coffee cup. Same with yourself. You can take a bunch of different resources and you can manipulate those to become the matter that will help you in your sobriety and recovery journey. Your energy, toward versus away, pessimistic versus optimistic, good versus bad, evil, genie, angel, the whole deal. You got your memories and your language patterns, how you talk about yourself, how other people talk about you. Are those optimistic and more positive? Are they pessimistic and more negative? We got to get into our memories of our past experiences and the decisions that we made. Did those benefit you? Do you choose to see how getting up on stage, and even though it didn't go well at 10, still showed you that you had enough internal fortitude to put yourself in an uncomfortable position? And that's really what we're looking for here, is comfortable in our uncomfort zone. So yeah, it didn't play out the way I had hoped, but at least I had enough drive and ambition to get up on that stage at 10 years old. How could I take that strength I had at 10 to just get on that stage, to now do something that feels extremely uncomfortable in my adult years? But still, I've got that internal fortitude to say, you know what, this may not feel great in the moment. I might be really uncomfortable being the center of attention, but there's an opportunity here and I must take it. That decision whether you feel fueled by positive or negative energy is going to affect how you experience that moment. And then that decision is going to then fuel self-esteem or self-doubt. Personality profile, I said enough about this earlier, but do we internalize or externalize information? Are we processing it internally or externally? Are we toward versus away driven? How many times do we have to, we call it a convincer strategy. How many times do we have to do something before we're convinced that we're, modicumly good at it, or even, considered a leading voice in something? If you cooked 10,000 dinners, do you consider yourself a good cook? Probably a lot more so than somebody who's only cooked 200 dinners, but how do you judge that experience? And then we have our morals, values, ethics, opinions, beliefs. We're going to get really into this whenever I do a spirituality themed show all on its own. We're going to give it all its own topic. And later on, I'm going to be bringing up one, I think it's called, it's coming up, spheres, pillars, and my priority focus system. And when we talk about our pillars, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual are our pillars. Our spheres are career, self, relationships, and we'll talk about those. And then as we progress, just further into all of this, and yeah, I'm talking a little bit more immediate because a lot of this information is new to YouTube. But for those of you who've been listening to me for a long time on the podcast, you're very familiar with a lot of the subject matter that I'm bringing up. So I'm trying to make this really awesome for the people who've been listening for 300 episodes, but also chunking it down and meeting you where you're at. If you're new to me on YouTube and you don't have any interest in going back and listening to the archive of 300 episodes I've already created, then I want to be able to introduce information to you in a way that's palatable, so you don't feel like you're getting lost in the sauce and that you have to go back and listen to 27 episodes in order to catch up. So I'm seeking to create two different experiences for two different kinds of people, all in one show. Boy, I could really eat at my self-doubt, couldn't it? So we got a lot of awesome coming up. So we'll get more into the whole spiritual, morals, ethics, values, opinions, beliefs, principles. Just understand that how you choose to judge yourself, which again is very much an unconscious response to all of the things that we've discussed here today. That's an anchor and a system and a programming that's in place. Have I breathed once during this show? You're going to have a lot of stigmas that you might attach or not attach because you've actionably told yourself not to attach stigmas to addiction because you consider yourself part of this community. You might want to attach a stigma to somebody who cries in public because they found out that their favorite football team lost. You might think that's ridiculous, but if you found out somebody was crying in public because they found out that their family pet died, that is completely encourageable. And at the same time, how anybody decides to present their emotions is up to them, whether it feels comfortable for you or not. Is that really what they should be focused on when they're feeling such an emotional surge? So judgments can oftentimes get in the way of empathy and compassion for other people, and definitely for yourself. And then your attitudes and your moods. And just think of attitude as a long-term held like decision-making process, emotional feeling versus mood being more temporary. Like my mood right now is extremely excitable and encouraging. Whenever I go to flip this off and I go to hit play in Zoom software to see if it's pixelated again, that mood will be very almost like not scared, but like trepidatious, right? Where I'm like, oh God, please work, please work, please work, please work, please work. I didn't wear any headphones. Please have the volume be good. I didn't watch myself on camera. Please let me look at the camera in the eyes the entire time. Please don't let there be pixelization. And then whenever I hit play and the sound sounds great and the lighting's great and everything played out, then I can have relief. And those are just moods. It's like, that it's like the wind. It's like the angle of the sun constantly changing every single second, versus my attitude about moving this over to YouTube and being able to do both auditory and visual mediums. I have a very positive attitude that I will figure this out and I will continue doing it. I will also try to figure out a way to stop making these things go an hour. And if you've listened all the way to the end, that's awesome. If you're a subscriber and notification button pusher, by all means do so. If not, just keep checking back. Eventually the algorithm will just force feed you my content. And if you're normally an auditory listener and you came over here just to hear a brand new episode about self-doubt, then you are probably very well aware that I tend to go on for an hour, even when I say I will only go on for 30 minutes. I think it's all the examples. I've felt way more animated in this one, so I hope that you've enjoyed that too. So that's it. Is it comprehensive? What's comprehensive? I could talk about this and I could literally cover this in 10 minutes and have this be impactful, or 1 hour and be impactful, or for 10 days and run a whole conference on this and be impactful. So if there's a part of you that would like to dive in more and hear it succinctly or more extrapolated, I can create both of those. Go to jessemogul.com/ask me. Feel free to fill out the form for NLP or for coaching. We can discuss maybe me coming in and speaking at one of your businesses or educational centers or addiction recovery center. And if you would like to have me as a recovery coach, I got a awesome tribe that I've created with people who are actively seeking my counsel. I am available for that too, as well as I teach NLP. That's starting Saturday, so you may be a little bit late for that one, but we're doing another one in the spring. And all this is available to find out more about on jessemogul.com/ask me. Fill out one of the forms. I would love to hear from you. And I mean that. I genuinely love getting on the phone or flipping on Zoom and seeing a listener to this show on the other side and learning more about them and experiencing their sobriety and recovery from their perspective, and how my content has helped them to feel that confidence and that empathy and that compassion towards themselves. And each and every day, it really is the best day of our lives when we can be the people who wake up sober and support one another. So that's it. We're done. Inclusivity over exclusivity, the power of positive energy, release and flow. Every day is the best day of our lives when we wake up sober. Let's see, what else? Did I forget something? Inclusivity over exclusivity, the power of positive energy, release and flow. Every day is the best day of our lives when we wake up sober. Shout out to Sunshine and Robert. Glow on. I don't think I forgot anything. I'm just such an excitable person. All right, my friends. Hope you've enjoyed it. Keep being awesome. And if you need any more, jessemogul.com/ask me. I'm here for you when you need me. Like I like to tell my clients, I'm only this far away. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.